Hey there! So, I've decided to go for a drive. At the moment, my van lifing has stopped due to the fact that I'm house sitting, and so I'm not living in my van at the moment for the next few months. But it's all cool. But I was kind of a little bit tired of sitting at home, so I'm taking Falky to the beach because we haven't had an adventure for a little while. So we're off. Squished my thigh. But today I've tried to record this video so many times. Today I want to tell you about how I lost my ability to orgasm and why it was the best thing that ever happened to me, or one of the best things. I've tried to record this video a few times now, but it just hasn't really worked out. And I think the reason for that is because I've been trying to, I don't know, I thought that I need to have some kind of a look or brand or something instead of just being myself. And then I kind of mentioned this on Instagram and I had a few people comment and say, we just love it when you're real. So my brand is gonna be just me being real. I think that's the key, and that's what makes me happy as well, because I love just being real. So let's talk about the loss of my orgasms, shall we? Yeah. So this is going to be the last time I record this video about my orgasms, I swear. So this is the last cut. Essentially what happened, how I lost my orgasms was, in a nutshell, my ex cheated on me. He had an affair with one of his best friends and we went through a really traumatic breakup, and he made me feel like I couldn't trust my intuition anymore because I suspected something, but then he denied it, and so I had a distrust of my intuition. So the breakup was very traumatic. Once I finally found out that it was actually true, we went through a very traumatic breakup. It was pretty horrible. And a year later, I was seeing some other people, but still talking to him, and we decided to get back together, and it was just like my body just didn't trust him anymore. It's like my mind talked through that this is the right move for us and that, you know, I should get back with him, but my body had its own ideas, and so whenever we had sex it just wasn't as pleasurable anymore. I lost my ability to orgasm completely, where I was highly orgasmic beforehand, and it was really just a matter of I was disconnected from myself. I was really disconnected from myself, and I wasn't listening to all the signs that my body was telling me that this isn't right for me. Because not only did I lose my ability to orgasm, I also lost my ability to cry, and I had this nerve twitching in my eye as well. So my nervous system was completely shot, and my heart was closed down, because when we cry, that's the emotions that come out of opening our hearts. So that was completely shut down, and I just didn't have the same connection with him. Although in some areas it actually did improve, like our communication, our friendship definitely improved. There were a lot of positives that came out of us being together for another, I think, 7 years before we broke up permanently. But I still remember and reflect on that time with anger towards, not so much towards him, because I don't know what his perspective was and I can't control what any other person does, but I feel anger towards myself that I allowed myself to be treated that way, and most importantly, I neglected to listen to my own intuition, which, you know, that kind of means that you don't trust yourself. And trusting myself is, or trusting ourselves is the most important thing for us, because who else do we really have? no one apart from ourselves going through this life journey. So it's so important for us to be able to trust ourselves and listen to our mind, body, heart and soul, and follow our truth. When someone else comes into our lives, we can't control what they're going to do, what they're going to say or anything like that. We can just continue listening to our intuition and figure out if each step of the way it's still the right thing for us. In that case, I don't think it was the right thing for us to get back together because my body was telling me no, but we still did, and it was a lesson. It was a great lesson, and we still had a loving, committed relationship afterwards, and it showed me also that people can change, because he never did anything like that again, and we're still friends, which is awesome. So that was the story of how I lost my ability to orgasm. Now, why was it the best thing that ever happened to me? Well, now don't get me wrong, when it was actually happening, it was the most frustrating, horrible experience that I had, and I didn't know what was going on with my body. I hated my body, I blamed my partner, I blamed myself, all sorts of things. So it wasn't always rosy. All of the insights that I got have been after pretty much 7 years of trying to get my orgasms back on track and back. And now I'm looking in hindsight, and that's why I kind of see the positive. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I love to psychoanalyze. I love to psychoanalyze myself, and I like to psychoanalyze other people and situations. I just have a passion for psychology, and I love reading about psychology and all sorts of things. I actually looked into becoming a psychologist, but studies aren't really for me, I don't think. Maybe one day, I don't know, haven't decided yet. Of course, when you psychoanalyze yourself, you kind of look back on these kind of situations and you go, in my case, I'm like, how the fuck did I get to a stage where I didn't trust myself and didn't trust my intuition? Especially because now I know that's one of the most important things for me to do in order to have a good relationship with myself. And I put it down to two things: trauma and social conditioning. Which kind of essentially means that I wasn't strong enough within myself, that I let those two things influence me in the decisions that I made and the choices that I made in life. I'm kind of at a stage in my life now where I've done a lot of research into trauma and looked into how to heal your trauma, and a lot of the healing I've done myself quite recently. Actually, I've kind of done a lot of healing along the time, but more purposeful, conscious healing has happened quite recently. And now when I think about having to talk about my trauma, I kind of get a little bit like, ugh, I don't want to revisit it. I don't really have that much emotion attached to it anymore. It's just something that happened and something that shapes me now, and I guess that's why I'm going to mention it. And it's relevant for this story. When it comes to trauma, if we have unresolved emotions in our bodies in regards to that traumatic experience or that traumatic memory that we have acquired, it can get stuck in our bodies, and our nervous system can go into overdrive if something triggers you, that triggers that feeling or that memory of that trauma. And in another video I'll tell you why I enjoy being triggered, but that's for another time. When you have this trauma and unprocessed emotions in your body, essentially you're making decisions based on that trauma and that traumatic event, because your body's trying to protect you in certain ways. You're trying to protect yourself unconsciously or consciously. So a lot of the decisions that I made were based on this foundation of the trauma that I experienced in early childhood and in my early teenage years, and then following on with the patterns that I had repeat over and over in life. One of the traumatic events that happened when I was, I think, about 6, one of my friends molested me, I guess, and it kind of made me freeze, and I had like that freeze response up until quite recently, until I finally identified where it came from and what it was. Another thing was my dad used to physically and mentally abuse me in my early teenage years as well, and so just from having people overstep my boundaries so much, especially my dad, and just to go through that kind of abuse, I didn't really know what boundaries were in regards to my body and to myself. I was so it made me become so disconnected from myself, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I also didn't trust myself. I read a quote recently that said that when a child is abused, they don't learn to not love their parents, they learn to not love themselves. And that hit hard. For me, it hit hard. Because that's pretty much how I felt in regards to myself. You know, you kind of think that something's wrong with you. You don't really question the person that was the abuser until you start to heal yourself and start to go on a journey of self-healing. So the way that that's relevant for this story and how I lost my orgasms was because I kept overriding my body. I was so disconnected from myself in so many ways that I wasn't listening to my body. The fact that, you know, the first time me and my ex got back together and was having sex, the fact that I felt numb, my pussy felt numb, or the fact that I wasn't feeling a connection with him, or that it just felt like he was enjoying himself and I wasn't getting anything for it, or the fact that I lost my orgasms. You know, that should have been a telltale sign that something wasn't right in that situation, or that I had something that was unprocessed, and that's not a very good foundation to go back into a relationship with, because it did cause trouble. And if you've suffered any trauma in your life, I would highly recommend looking into trauma and the effects that it has on us and the decisions we make and just the behaviors and actions that we take in life, because it really is significant, very, very significant. So trauma is one thing. The other thing that I believe led to me not trusting myself and not loving myself and taking actions that went against what was right for me is social conditioning. You know, women and men are both conditioned to be and act certain ways because that's what makes them feminine or masculine, I guess, in a way. For women, I think a big thing is that we're never taught about our own pleasure. When we have sex, it's more about, I guess, pleasing the man, or at least that's the kind of conditioning that I have experienced. I just neglected my own pleasure and didn't listen to my own pleasure, and I was trying to force myself to orgasm a lot of the time because I was so attached to the fact that I was able to easily orgasm previously, and that meant that I was a good woman in a way, because men are conditioned to believe that when a woman orgasms, they've done a good job that makes them a man. So in a lot of ways, the orgasm has been made this epitome of sexual satisfaction, that you've done good at sex. But orgasm means so many different things, and not everyone has the same types of orgasms. And losing my ability to orgasm made me realize just how stupid a standard that is, essentially, just having that goal of orgasm during each sexual encounter. Orgasm can be fantastic, but orgasm can be so many other different things as well. It can be frustrating, it can be non-existent, it can be a point of pain, it can be your body reacting to a certain situation. It can be so many different things. It doesn't necessarily always mean pleasure, satisfaction, or fulfillment. So I had to really rethink what I thought about orgasms and sexual pleasure, and one thing that I realized is that the partners that I had a good connection with, they were the most pleasurable sexual experiences that I would have. The partners that I didn't have a connection with, they were pretty shit experiences sexually. So connection is really, to me, the epitome of a sexual experience these days, because you can't fake connection. You can't force connection. You either have it or you don't. There were a lot of things that I've had to work through on my Tantra journey as well, and just kind of allow myself to feel these different parts and allow myself to pleasure myself, to feel pleasure, and what does pleasure mean for me, and that it's okay to feel pleasure, that it's actually good for me to feel pleasure, that it's good for me to enjoy and consciously enjoy sex, that it's not something that's dirty and nasty and something that should be, you know, not talked about and is taboo. It's actually quite natural, and sex is also an art form, and we should be educating ourselves more and more about this area of life that affects so many other areas of our lives. It's not something that is, you know, pushed to the side and won't affect the rest of your life. No, if you push this area of your life away, it's going to come out in different areas of your life. And that's just how it works. When we deny our parts, when we deny parts of ourselves, they're going to manifest in different ways. So it's important for us to be able to embrace all parts of ourselves and integrate them back into ourselves and our truth, and recognize that they all serve a purpose. There were also a few other things that I think contributed to me not having my orgasms for such a long time. I'm just trying to be quiet because there's kids in this park and sex is still taboo. And pleasure is still taboo. And I think, you know, during that time, not only did I lose my ability to cry, but I also had a twitch in my eye, so my nervous system was shot, and I lost my ability to orgasm, but also my hormones were completely out of whack. And I remember just thinking to myself, hang on a second, it's not normal for me to not be able to orgasm and not be able to cry and not be able to, and have this twitch in my eye and be putting on so much weight and my hormones being so out of whack that sometimes it takes 3 months for me to get a period. Like, that's not cool. I went to doctors initially, and they just wanted to put me on the pill again, which I was off for a few years, and I think the pill is what messed up my hormones, and a lot of research coming out these days suggests that the pill does a lot of damage to a woman's hormones. And that I read a quote the other day that said that the pill is one of the largest uncontrolled experiments on women in the world. So that contributed to my hormones being out of whack. And I gave up on westernized doctors and traditional medicine because they weren't able to help me. But I went to a naturopath, and she did a whole heap of tests, whole heap of blood tests. She asked me a million questions about my well-being, which I think doctors should be doing as well, but they don't. So what the fuck are they learning in medical school? Excuse my French. It turned out my hormones were completely out of whack. I was really stressed from the corporate work that I was doing as well. And she gave me a whole heap of herbal supplements, and my periods started to come back again. I started menstruating again, which is like one of the most beautiful things, I think, about being a woman, especially now that I know what I know about menstruation and the magic around it, which we can do another video about. So my periods started to come back, and that's when I finally started to experience, after 2 years of struggling with my orgasms started to come back in a teeny tiny way. They were more frustrating than anything, but it was a step forward. Hormones are super important to check when it comes to orgasm as well, because that was definitely one of the first steps towards my recovery, and a very important one, and made me realize the importance of female health and our hormones and our menstruation, and the fact that our bodies are just beautiful miracles that are doing everything right for us, and their sole job is to keep us alive and healthy and well. And I think maybe it's even social conditioning for us to hate our bodies, you know, because we're taught that we're not thin enough or not pretty enough and all sorts of things, and it's just all bullshit. Like, this body and your body has evolved over millions of years to become what it is today. And literally, it is perfect because it's keeping us alive, it's keeping us in the best health that it knows for the conditions that we're in and everything that we subject our bodies to. And I don't know about you, but I've subjected my body to some pretty horrible things in the past. It's doing the best that it possibly can with millions of years and wisdom through evolution. It's doing the best that it can. So this concept of us hating our bodies, something that is so perfect, that has evolved over millions of years, and just judging it on a surface thing is complete bullshit. And that's one of the things that made me realize that I actually love my body, and it has a lot of wisdom. Once you start unlocking the wisdom that your body has, whoo, mama, there's some serious wisdom in this body, I'll tell you that. And we all have it. We all have this incredible wisdom within ourselves. There might be some other things that contributed to it, but I think, and that I'm not aware of, but I think that they're kind of like the main things that I can think of, and that in hindsight, and I've been kind of stewing over the whole losing the orgasms things for a while, 7 years to get back on track with them, that I think those were the main reasons for it. And one of the reasons why I'm grateful for me losing my ability to orgasm is because without that experience, I wouldn't have reached this place where I am now, where I understand myself, where I love myself, and where I respect myself. And I would never allow someone to treat me that way again, because I know how I deserve to be treated. And I also know how others deserve to be treated as well. And so I don't feel like I would find myself in a situation like that again. I feel like I've learned my lesson and what I've needed to learn from that situation now, and I can move on to bigger and better things like self-pleasure and helping myself reach orgasm, which is awesome, by the way. Just being able to have that ability, you know, before I used to always just, there's people there and sex is taboo. Before I used to have vibrators, and I remember that only once did I make myself orgasm with my fingers, with my hand. I was so proud of that moment, but I was always like, oh, it just takes too much effort, it takes too much time to reach that point, and blah blah blah. So I never did it again. But now on this Tantra journey and learning about pleasure and just my own juiciness and deliciousness, all I use is my hands. And it's so amazing, like it just blows my mind to think how far I've come now, and my orgasms feel completely different. They're recharging, they're more satisfying, because I'm so conscious of my body and what happens in my body. I'm conscious of my body's wisdom and the power that I hold, and I'm conscious of my own pleasure and my own needs as well. So when I make myself orgasm, it's kind of like a whole revelation, and it's just so beautiful. And I wouldn't switch that for anything else. You know, I'm grateful that I lost my ability to orgasm back then, and that it's taken me 7 years on an incredible, challenging, frustrating journey, hard journey to get to where I am now. But it's worth it. It's been worth it, and I'm grateful that I know myself the way that I know myself now, and I'm just happier. Just happier. I think that's it. I think that's my story finally told, and now I just need to edit this video. But if you liked it, then please, I appreciate any of your feedback, whether it's subscribing to my channel, whether it's liking this video, whether it's commenting. I love your juicy comments underneath my videos. I love them so much, or on my posts on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram. Also, I'm building my website soon to come. I'm gonna be running more workshops soon as well, so lots of things, lots of good things are happening, which kind of, I guess, started with the fact that I lost my ability to orgasm. That's the journey that I've been on all this time, and discovering Tantra, and yeah.